Hi, Alex Gregory here, your iFIT trainer. I can't wait to show you around. We're in Carcassonne in the south of France. It's an extraordinary castle. Let's go and check it out. Okay, so we're just about to walk into the main entrance of the castle, of the fortifications, and just take in this site. The walls are 3 kilometers around. It's the biggest self-contained town in Europe. But that hasn't come quickly. That's been formed over thousands of years. And as we go, I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But let's just get warmed up. Let's just ease into this walk. Take it steady to start with. We want to maintain a steady pace throughout as we walk through the castle walls and the thousands of years of history that we'll see all around us. And as you can see, it's a pretty popular tourist spot. Even in winter, we're in winter now, even in this time of year, people are coming. And that's why we're here, because it's such an interesting, it's an incredibly fascinating place. So people are going to come here the whole time. We'll just navigate our way through, taking a view of these tiny little streets. And if we think about it, there's been settlement on this site for 12,000 years. The first settlement here was in Neolithic times, and then over the centuries it's built up through the medieval times, and it's all because of the position within the country. As I say, we're in the south of France. We're on the edge of a river, in between two mountain ranges, just north of the Pyrenees. The pigeons, the buildings, everything's all around us. There's a real atmosphere to this place. It's really cool. But because of the defensive position it has, it's had people here for thousands of years. Let's go down this street here. There are all these little squares, and you could spend days winding your way through these little streets. And now, of course, it's full of cafes and restaurants and little touristy shops. But if you think in medieval times, particularly at its height, at its peak of usefulness, it would have been a bustling citadel, completely safe from marauding armies, which has been rife throughout the history. Let's just go and have a look over the walls over here. And anywhere in this town that you can see red slated rooftops, those are Roman, so those are the Roman towers. And this is where, in around 100 BC, the Romans sort of took over this city. Before that, it was the Celts. And the Romans just built upon the Celtish town that they'd built here before, because they'd found the best location. So the Romans almost trusted them for it to be a useful place. And then they built this city up, they built fortifications, and in the Roman times it was all about power. It was all about showing power and grandeur. So as the Romans built up these towers, the surrounding areas could see that the Romans were in charge. And so for a couple of thousand years, the Romans took over this area. So now you're feeling a little warmed up. Is the blood flowing? You're feeling comfortable? Everything we do in this workout is fairly flat. It's a manageable incline throughout. So we'll keep and maintain our pace. And I just want you to feel comfortable, but for this to be a really useful workout. For you to be able to build on everything you've done. And throughout this, I'm going to talk a little bit about goals and how we set goals. And as a rower, I had some pretty serious goals in my life, but the only way we could do that was through small increments, small, easy, manageable goals. So every building in here now was built in the medieval period inside the centre. The Roman occupation was destroyed in around 1000 AD. And there's been times throughout history where no one has lived here, and then civilizations have come back. The Saracens, the Moors, the Celts before. And then in the religious wars of France around 1200 AD, there were battles constantly. So all the walls and fortifications and buildings you see around here were really established after the Roman period. But then we'll talk about a little bit more about that when we get up close to the walls further along. So we're going to make our way down through this narrow little street. And when I talk about our goals in fitness, the only way to achieve those goals, I think, no matter how big or small, is to take it small steps at a time. And I think it's the way Carcassonne was built over the years. Every period in history is just a small step in its long history. And we can talk about the history in a few minutes here, but actually it's taken thousands of years to build. And it's the same with what we're trying to achieve in anything we do in life. When I think back to my rowing career, I was trying to win Olympic gold medals. And that's daunting. That's almost impossible. You can't just turn up one day and expect to become an Olympic champion. So I had to break it down one step at a time, one moment in time, and I struggled with that for so many years. I went through periods of my history which were almost war periods, like this town. I struggled, I failed time and time again, and actually for 8 years I had disaster after disaster. I wasn't achieving what I was trying to achieve, and I felt at times like I was going backwards. I think we all feel like that. If we have down days, weeks where we're not motivated by what we're doing, I think we feel like our fitness can slip. And it's quite a lot about our psychology. But if we break it down and break these habits into tiny little steps, that's where we can make big change. And if we're more patient with what we do, we'll see the benefits in time. And I hope this walking series is a way to allow you to do that. These are all manageable walks where I can show you around and you can just get a small bit of benefit each time you do it. So we're right on the edge of the castle walls here, the city limits, and just here is the cathedral, the main cathedral. And actually, in the grand scheme of things, it's quite modern. It was built about 1200, and it's been destroyed in its time, and it's been built up as a fortified church. And that in the way it's built now, you can see that fortification. It's thick, it's strong, it was built to last. But actually, in terms of the towers and the walls and some of the buildings in the centre, it's really young, it's really modern. It's about 1,200 years old. All right, so as we come around this corner of the fortified church, take a look at the gargoyles sticking out the side. They're everywhere around this. It's just a form of decoration. And they've been looking down over this city for probably 1,000 years. Now we're going to wind our way down this little cobbled street here, but have a look at this central building. I don't know what it is, but it must have been something to do with the church. And look at the way it's built out over the, and this is quite a traditional medieval form of building where they can access more space, more upper space, and still keep the streets below, which don't need much height for the carts and the horses and the people to walk down through these streets. We're going to wind our way down here now. And as we do this, I just want to tell you a little bit about what changed my motivation in sport, because this links back to forming habits, why we want to do something. And in those times that I was mentioning, when I was struggling in those 8 years of failure, I didn't really have a motivation. I didn't really know what my motivation was. I had a goal, this huge goal, which was too far out of my reach. And I always said I wanted to be an Olympic gold medalist and win races, but I didn't know what that meant. It was too far away. That's why I think we have to pull back on our goals and set small targets. When we talk about this, we're just going down in between the walls here, in between the ramparts. And there's two layers to this fortification. The inner one was obviously the first built one, starting in Roman times and over the centuries since. And it wasn't until the 12th century that the outer walls were built. And that was when the defences really needed to grow and become stronger. And it started in the 12th century in the religious wars, where the Cathar religion started in France. I've read into this a little bit, and the Cathar religion started, they think, in Eastern Europe, and it spread through Europe, it spread through France, and it was a religion that was much more equal. After the Christian faith grew from the Roman times outwards, the church grew so wealthy and so powerful that people were starting to resist that power. And so the Cathars was a much more peaceful religion where everyone was equal. There were no highs and lows. And in fact, it was the first time that women could become leaders in the church. But that caused problems throughout the Christians in France. And the Cathars were chased and killed and moved out of places and moved out of parts of France into small settlements, small mountain settlements where they felt safe. So during those religious wars, this city was sometimes, for some periods of the 100 years or more of that period, was a safe sanctuary, depending on the ruler of the city at the time. But then other times, it was a place that would expel the Cathars into the countryside, into the mountains, where they'd have to find places to reside in safety. There's a tower. It's the tower right behind us here that's called the Inquisition Tower. And there's a horrendous history and horrendous stories behind the Cathars, the religious dissidents who were tortured in this tower, tortured terribly. And in the 12th century, you do not want to be in the Tower of Inquisition. So let's take a little look over the ramparts here